here for the after the Digital Tornado Conference. We've got a fantastic group of people here speaking, and so we're going to get things right going. First, important housekeeping stuff. You probably already figured this out, but Wi-Fi, AirPenNet guest, and then you go through the login process. We have a Twitter account at Digital Tornado, at After the Tornado, that will be tweeting out things from the conference. The hashtag is ATDT. So I'm going to see how many old timers we have here. Who knows what ATDT is? Okay, okay, yeah, exactly. So back when a modem looked like this, maybe not even quite that far back, that was the command that you used to dial a number, to dial up to your bulletin board, to do all of your important stuff that you did at the time.
Wait, I think that one's ATDP.
Oh, maybe, oh, yeah.
That one will work. That's
Okay, well, always a critic. But I thought it was kind of a nice connection. Because part of what I wanted to do with this conference is look back and look forward. I'm going to talk in a minute about the context of the paper I wrote at the FCC and so forth, but I think all of us understand that the internet is not a new thing anymore. We've been dealing with a lot of these issues and these companies and these markets and these technologies for decades, and yet things are still changing. We're seeing all kinds of new developments, and the issues that we're all struggling over right now, in many cases, are technologies that barely existed just a few years ago. So the framing of this conference is to try to understand what we've learned, but really to use that as a way to understand where we are in the present and where we are going forward. And just by way of starting, really thrilled that we have Jeff Garrett here, the Dean of the Wharton School, to say just a few words to welcome all of you. Jeff has done an amazing job since he's been here at Wharton in infusing more of a spirit of entrepreneurship in the school and really focusing us on some of these, the kinds of issues that we're going to talk about here. So, Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Kevin. I wouldn't stand behind the mic or hide behind the podium normally, but apparently we're being recorded for posterity and streamed live, so I need to speak into a device. So I'm happy to do that. I actually remember the pre-modem world. I was at Oxford University. Anyone at Oxford in the 80s in this room? You know what their communication device was called? Gandalf. And since I wasn't a Lord of the Rings person, I had no idea what this Gandalf was. And I think
he was a Cambridge guy.
Cambridge.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
Imitation is indeed the highest form of flattery, but it is quite remarkable. I also remember going from the US to Oxford in 1985, and I had the Singer sewing machine Compact, which was the first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We called it a luggable, I think, back then. It probably weighed 25 pounds. It was literally a desktop computer that you could put in a suitcase. Hard to do that in your carry-on. So it is remarkable how far the world's come. On behalf of the school, I wanted to thank and congratulate Kevin and everyone associated with putting this wonderful event together, and also to thank all of those of you who've travelled far and wide to be here today. Subject matter is really important. I said to Kevin that I don't like doing just ceremonial welcomes, on behalf of the Wharton School. I'm really glad you're here. But of course I do want to do that. But I'd like to do a little more than ceremonial. So I was actually thinking about two things that have touched me in the last few weeks, which I think have really been about the consequence of the digital tornado. So the first one is that I got a chance to do amazing things as dean of the school, but one of the more interesting ones I've done recently was I was hanging around in a room with a bunch of rather high-end Chinese tech entrepreneurs. One of whom was Jack Ma of Alibaba. And I just did a session with some Chinese students on the rise of Chinese mobile payments. as a sort of innovation phenomenon and a non-government-led phenomenon in China. So I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the statistic in 2016 was that Chinese mobile payments was 50 times the size of digital payments in the US. So I did a lecture at Tsinghua University where I said that, and a polite student stuck up her hand and said, that was the 2016 numbers. In the first half of 2017, we believe the ratio's gone up to 70x. Now, what is Chinese mobile payments? Chinese mobile payments is two tech companies, Alibaba and Tencent. But those two companies are becoming banks, because not only are people, you know, when I do my Venmo account, if I do it on my credit card, they charge me 3%, right? They want me to put a balance on my Venmo account. If I put a balance on my WeChat account or my Alipay account, I'm going to use that every day, so I'm going to have a lot of money there. Jack Ma at Alibaba has created the fastest growing money market fund in the world, managing money that sits on Alipay to buy stuff. I asked Jack, how's that going with Chinese regulators? And he said, every day they're trying to regulate what we do, but they're always playing catch up. Because we innovate so quickly that even the power of the Chinese government is not strong enough to take on what we're doing. And I've spoken with a bunch of bank CEOs in China, and they know that they can't get into mobile payments because they can't go as quickly as the tech companies. Right? So this is the classic case where even if the regulators want to do something about it, and even if they know what you're doing, they can't, they're always playing catch up. So that's a pretty profound thing, I think. Second is one that I've spoken with Kevin a little bit about. I was in the Bay Area a couple of weeks before that China trip, so about a month ago now, and I was talking with a very successful VC about the world of social media. And this was, he was actually predicting the future, because I think all this stuff then became very big in the press. But he was basically talking about the fact, about the role of social media, right? So I don't know about you, but I think that this is the first time in my living memory, my sentient memory in the United States, that politics has become more divided after the election than before the election, right? We live in a world in which things go like this before the election, and then you expect them to come back together. That hasn't happened. Probably multiple reasons for them, but I think social media has to be part of the story at least. And if you think about that, and the notion that the tech companies can say, listen, we just have algorithms. We're not making any, first of all, we're not media companies, and second, we're not making any active decisions. We just have algorithms that optimize stuff. If it's really true that the big tech companies value emotion over rationality because it moves the optimization dial for them, it moves the eyeballs dial for them, that has enormous, now we're not talking about traditional media companies, we're talking about a deeper penetration into society and arguably a broader, a widening of the divides in society on a scale we've never seen before. So let's say that's true. What do you do? The Silicon Valley answer to that question is not to try to regulate the big tech companies. It's not in their DNA, that's not a Silicon Valley DNA. But if the Jack Ma example is right, if the Chinese government can't do it, it's unlikely that other states that work less quickly and have more constraints, and are subject to lobbying and everything else, can do it either. So my friend in the Bay Area says the only solution to this, and again, I don't understand these words. I think you understand it. It's now become a verb, right? So the answer is we should blockchain social media. I didn't know it was such a good joke, since I don't really understand what it means, but we should blockchain social media to take it out of the hands of companies as the only solution, right? The traditional regulatory solution that we would suggest for something that looks like media or something that looks like finance. And of course, blockchain is also democratizing finance, right? If that's its core purpose. So I thought that was just fascinating that we have this in two very, very different domains, money and media. We have tech companies doing things that governments find virtually impossible to regulate, even if they want to, even if they're incredibly intentional about it. That's a profound thing, right? And I also think it exists in other parts of the digital world as well. My favorite example of that always is Uber, right? You see a protest in London against Uber, and somebody's gumming up the streets of London to protest against Uber, right? The taxi drivers are blocking the streets. Where is Uber? It's not like they're protesting outside Uber HQ. They can't find Uber, right? How are you going to regulate that if you can't even find it, if you don't know where it is? So I think it was, prescient of Kevin to say that this was a tornado with all the positive and the negative destructive implications of that. And I think it's an enormous challenge for us all. But I'm actually increasingly struck by the fact that it makes sense for a place like the Wharton School to be engaged in these debates. One reason is we're big and broad, so we have a statistics department. We also have a department that's got lawyers and philosophers in it. There are not a lot of business schools like that. So our scale and scope makes this fair game. But I also think that at a very profound level, we're talking about serious interdisciplinarity here, because you need a humanities perspective. You need to understand the world of policy. You absolutely need to understand the public role of the private sector, which I think is an enormous part of our world. And you need to understand the technology well enough that blockchain isn't just a joke, it's something that has real meaning to you. So I think that means that it's actually entirely appropriate that the convening of this event is happening in the Wharton School. We are big and we are broad, but these problems, the challenges we face, and the opportunities that are in front of us are so radically interdisciplinary that the normal academic silos just don't work. And I think, I'll end with that. I think it is what the real world is telling us in universities today is that we tend to think about methods moves. In an equation sense, we tend to be looking at the right-hand side of a statistical equation. What's the killer variable that explains a bunch of phenomena in the world? But what the world cares about actually is the left-hand side. What are the problems that we need to be solved? We want you to solve them, but we don't care about which tribe you belong to or which method you ascribe to. They care about solutions. And so I think an event like this, which is radically interdisciplinary, is exactly the way to go, because that's what the world will expect of us. So I think those are my unscripted substance remarks, and as is the life of a dean, even though I'm wearing my Allbirds today, by the way, because I had to do a video this morning on Wharton startups, I actually have to have a boring dean's afternoon of 5 more meetings. So I'm going to go and do that. I'd actually love to be a fly on the wall here. Maybe I can see some stuff recorded after the fact. I hope you have a great afternoon and a day tomorrow. On behalf of the university and the Wharton School, I want to welcome you and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much. Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. So I'm going to say a few words by way of introduction, and then we'll get right into it. And I guess if I could invite the people on the first panel, you can come on up and get your mics on while I'm talking, just so we don't have anything in between. Some of you may have seen this article from a couple days ago in the New York Times by Cathy O'Neill, who wrote the book Weapons of Math Destruction, arguing that academia needs to step up in addressing questions about accountable algorithms and related topics. And Cathy got criticized by a number of people, including me, for not realizing just how much is actually happening. And many of the people that are here talking at the conference are people working on exactly these issues. But she responded that what she really meant to say was there's a lot of great work happening. There needs to be more. It needs to have more support. It needs to come together more in collaborative ways, and we need to organize to have more impact. And I think all that's right. And I think all that is part of, in some small bit, what I'm trying to do with this conference, but it's part of an ongoing process. And I think we always need to think about not just what are the issues and what's the work that's going on, but where does this ultimately go? And as you heard from the dean, at least at this institution, there's a lot of willingness to support this kind of work, and I'm certainly open for any of you that are interested in going further down some of these roads coming out of this conference. Let's figure out things we can do together. Housekeeping. Everything's in this room except for the lunch tomorrow, and snacks, coffee, and so forth are across the hall in room 351. There's also a simulcast there if you feel like being in a quieter space to watch the video. Basically, the structure of the conference, we've got a panel at the beginning and the end, and then most of it is going to be a set of pods, basically, where we have 2 presenters and 1 discussant. The presenters are all presenting early versions of what's going to be chapters in a book that's going to come out from Cambridge University Press once everything gets together. And the commenters will be leading discussion around that. And then interspersed, we're going to have tomorrow 2 technical talks, one on machine learning and one on security. I want this to be interactive, and so we're going to do as much as we can. It's one reason to have the discussants and putting people together. Do as much as we can with the people up here talking to each other, but we also want to make sure that there's an opportunity for you to engage as well. So we have a mic that'll go around during the Q&A process so we can get it on the video stream. But please don't hesitate to come up with and ask questions because frankly that's the value of doing things like this as opposed to just sitting and watching it from home. As I said, everything is here, breaks across the hall. There's a reception at the end of the day today with hors d'oeuvres and one at the end of the day tomorrow. Those are in the stock exchange, which is on the same floor here. If you just go out the building and ask someone to direct you, they'll take you right there. It's a lounge area on this same floor. That's all you need to know about where things are. Let me just thank the organizations that helped support this financially and in kind to allow us to put this on. The Wharton School and the Dean's Office, Comcast, and then 3 of the research centers here at Penn, Center for Technology, Innovation, and Competition, the Mack Institute for Innovation Management, and the Warren Center for Network and Data Sciences. Indication of the interdisciplinary nature of what's going on here, and I think the recognition among a lot of different communities that these are worthwhile issues to discuss. So I thank all of them for their contributions in helping make it possible. All right, so digital tornado. 20 years ago, kind of scary for me. Probably, oh, he still got a copy, all right. Probably scary, I think,